not totally accurate, or even if you disagree with the numbers. Having a pro-fracking conservative say, and one of the reasons I'm for American natural gas is because it is good for it reduces the risk of climate change. Like, even if you're not sure that's right, having them say that is a real big win. Would all the folks with their hands up agree with that at least? Okay, awesome. I mean, let's just.
So this is the term to avoid, so no more questions, comments.
Apparently I shouldn't tell you what I think about Keystone, XL, and Canadian tar sands oil either.
So
we're happy.
we have a microphone in the hand back there, so as long as it's not on fracking.
We're happy to talk individually about fracking and power plant efficiency and measuring fugitive emissions and all that stuff later, but it gets pretty complicated. And a market-based approach, like CCL's approach, is the right approach. And the CCL's approach also includes fugitive methane emissions, so we've got it covered.
Is it possible to talk about how to do the message instead of specific technology?
Yes.
Repeat the question, please.
Well, I'm going to roll. Let's have this question here and get to the next slide because we want to avoid these topics. Remember?
How to do these are topics to avoid.
I think our discussion here probably shows why you don't want to go down the rabbit trail in a congressional office too.
All right.
Niels!
From Germany. Hi, Alex. Yeah, and actually in Germany we would like to have more natural gas and less coal. So there it's maybe something we'd like to be in that problem of having cheap natural gas. But yes, you just said okay, avoid that issue. I wouldn't use the word fracking either. I mean, that's a loaded term in a way, and has become a loaded term. But I have gotten the impression from reading the CCL communication that it's always wind and solar that I mentioned, and those are, every environmentalist loves. But if the point is not to have technology-specific policies, but to have a carbon price that allows the market to see, what's happening, then we have to admit that natural gas is probably in the short term going to be a winner. In the long term, that might look different, but in the short term, relatively cold natural gas might very well be a winner. So I think that's at least something we should probably spend a little time on and see how to have the discussions without.
That's where we're going now.
Without seeming, in the meetings that CCL is pushing for certain technologies only.
We want market actors to solve the problem, not government. Thank you. So I turned it over, but there was one thing in the bottom back there was doomsday scenarios. I cannot tell you how important it is to stay away from, my God, we got to save Mother Earth. We got to save humanity. The Earth doesn't care what we do. And trying to tell someone they've got to hurry up and do something right now about something they don't agree with is just shutting down the conversation. So, what appeals to everybody? Kind of obvious, right? Anyone disagree with anything that's on there? On either side of the aisle in this church?
That's good.
No, I haven't remembered Anne Rand was extolling the virtues of the chemical pollution coming out of New Jersey back in I'm sorry. Anne Rand was extolling the virtues of chemical pollution in New Jersey quite extensively. So if you're saying no one thinks that...
Well, we do have clean air and water. No one wants to live in pollution. And I don't know the whole context of the Ayn Rand thing, but...
She didn't live downwind from the New Jersey refineries.
So my academic background is actually in inhalation toxicology. And I read this really powerful book called When Smoke Ran Like Water. And it's about, it's framed in the context of this Pennsylvania town with a zinc factory. And the pollution was really bad. And then there was an inversion and the pollution was trapped over the town. And within 24 hours, half of the town was sick. But this town was the zinc town. So, when the air smelled funny, that was money. That was the smell of money and profit. And I think that we've seen that the power of the environmental movement thus far has been disassociating the smell of pollution with the idea of making money. And we just need to keep that up.
And on being listened to and group acceptance, if you are a Republican, if you are a conservative, if you are a libertarian, and you're meeting with a staffer, and you say, I'm a conservative Republican, and I believe that climate change is a problem, that is your most powerful statement, because they still need to be convinced it's a problem and that other conservatives care about it.
Yeah, thank you. This what appeals to everybody. You could, if you want to get a laminated copy and put it in your wallet for when you have Thanksgiving dinner, you might want to try that. And number one's being listened to. So what appeals to conservatives? I want to pick up one of these.
I'm going to add one here, which probably should have went on the previous slide, which is just respect in general. I think that anytime you're trying to convince someone who you know doesn't agree with you on a lot of things, of something that's important to you, it becomes really easy to condescend, like without even knowing that you're doing it. And a lot of folks on the right, I think, perceive correctly in many instances, and it goes both ways, so forgive me, but that just the very breath of environmentalists is holier than thou. Like that they are telling you, what kind of car to drive, what kind of light bulb to use, what pollution is good versus bad, or what emissions are good versus bad. That they somehow know how you should be living your life better than you do. And it is not easy to avoid that perception. And so I think the only way to really do it is just to approach these conversations with real, just respect for folks. It doesn't really say much there, but I thought it was important.
Some personal stories of how you carry this out in your own life.
Question?
The question
She
was
asked
for
about
personal stories. We're going to get to those at the end when we have time. I wanted to share a little sidebar that Alex and I had, and we had a disagreement with the chair. The chair, of course, being the chair, prevailed. But the topic for this is how to talk to conservatives, more or less, right? So Alex and I were getting really fired up. We were like, well, why is it always about that? Well, why can't we say how to talk to progressives? Because it ain't so easy. They're so high-minded, so certain, so self-righteous, arrogant. I know this because I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm surrounded by it. Sorry. I love it. My wife's progressive, obviously.
Alex's comment about not being told what to drive or what to do, I think is really important. And I would say your initial statement earlier, gentlemen at the podium, about how this is a problem that we created. If we lead with that, I find it doesn't work so well. And if I tell somebody who happens to have an Escalade that they're the problem, indirectly, not so good, right? It's not their fault that it turns out the products that we have to buy happen to be the ones that harm us.
Good point, and I stand corrected. You're right.
I want to say, I want my electricity, I want my home heated, I want my gas, my car to go, and I want this all to change. So it's almost like if we own the fact that we are customers of the coal, gas, and oil industry, and we will be probably for our lifetimes, and let's change things, that might be a place to start.
Red shirt.
I just have a question on some of those items. One of the things the last session I was in was on public health, and I wonder if conservatives care about public health and whether it's not a public health. Whether a public health
Only if it's contagious.
Whether the Remy report, which showed a reduction in the number of deaths due to asthma and those aspects, those co-benefits of acting on climate change, whether that's something that would resonate with conservatives.
So if you care about the public health impacts of climate change, it's because you already think the climate is changing and we can do something about it. So yes, I think that public health arguments are really powerful. But it's hard to say, well, all we need to do is enact a policy to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which you don't think are a problem, and as a fringe benefit, we'll see a public health impact benefit, right? So we already see CAFE standards and emissions reductions for power plants that are not based on carbon try to attack those same problems. And I think conservatives sort of bristle at the idea that we're counting those benefits that we agree with in this same package as all of the greenhouse gas emission strategies that we find a little bit conflicting. So I would just caution that the co-benefits are a really great thing to bring up, but make sure that you're talking about them in a way that sort of defers to conservatives' concern about the way greenhouse gas emissions policies are proposed. Maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm sorry.
No, that's good, Katrina, thank you. I want to move on because we'll have time, hopefully we'll have time at the end for general questions, but I want to make sure we cover these points. Do you want to add anything here?
No, next slide.
Okay, so good terms to use. So this is the fun interactive chance. So what I'd like here, we're not going to play music like Lene would and have a little dance, but shout out what you think are good terms to use, and I'll roll them up later and see how many of them you get. So shout them out. What do I hear? Free market.
Innovation.
Free enterprise. What's this?
Prudence.
Prudence.
Liberty.
Liberty.
Innovation. Fruit or kayak.
All right. Chaos is not one of them.
Conservation, local jobs.
Limited government.
No one said tax cuts.
Very good at this.
This one, I hope really resonates from the talk we had yesterday morning. No, it was last night, wasn't it? I love that card. Energy freedom, your family, your choice. Energy freedom.
Okay.
Well, what do you say, Dr. Chair?
I mean, a lot of these are good, and so we just made a list, and, there's the whole list.
I rolled it.
This is certainly not inclusive, and I think a lot of you have suggested some good ones to add to this. I don't think, do we have free market on there? We have market-based, free market, okay. Free enterprise, that was a good one. We have energy freedom, so some good things there. No regulation or minimal regulation. Externalities is good, especially with libertarians. Sustainable, I think sustainable's, it depends. Sometimes that resonates with conservatives, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they think of it as an environmentalist buzzword, but it's kind of more neutral. Families, definitely, we don't have that up here. So those are pretty good suggestions. I didn't catch all of them, I only caught a few. Anyone else want to add anything?
Conservation.
One term that I tend to use if I'm with someone who might be thinking that maybe carbon's a problem and wants a solution or something to talk about with folks back home is market-based climate change risk management.
What was that?
Market-based climate change risk management.
That's like 3 of those, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll roll into the good approach slide. And again, this is framed for members of Congress, but it really can be applied to that family and friend conversation you're having too.
So on this one, I'm going to talk about be happy if you are getting objections. Those of you that have been in sales, you know that the training tells you if you're getting objections, they're engaged. If you don't get objections, they're not engaged. So getting objections is good. And it goes back to like the first thing we said on the slide. You're not there to argue with them. You're there you're there to, you know, win their, I forget what it said exactly.
Earn their support.
Earn their support, thank you. But anyway, so don't view objections when you're lobbying. If you get objections, that's a good thing. And don't think that, oh, I've got to get them back on that one. I've got to get them back on that one. No, listen to them and, you know, keep going with the questions and be happy if you're getting objections.
So I used to work for a member of Congress. I was in the meetings that you will have tomorrow, sitting on the other side of the table. And I'll tell you, one surprising thing is that 20-somethings run the United States of America. Don't be surprised. 20-somethings run the United States of America. Don't be surprised. So the staff members that you'll have meetings with, they came to DC because they're really jazzed and they want to work on positive policies and they want to do good by their boss. And it's a really great opportunity to sit down and listen to how you can help them do that. It's far more powerful to ask how you can be a helpful constituent than tell them what they need to do to make you happy. Because they're not there for your vote, they're there to make their boss feel like he's presenting a complete stance on the issue. So just be really mindful that these meetings are about building a relationship and not about delivering a sermon or some facts.
Katrina, before you give up the mic, I know our street does a lot of work on insurance. And in the last slide, we talk about reduced risks, national security, FEMA, subsidized flood insurance and stuff like that. Can you give us a little comment on why that's so important?
Yeah, I guess it's an argument that wins over conservatives that already care about the insurance industry, but the insurance industry is sort of like a black box and really unsexy, so not a lot of people do care about the insurance industry. But it is the first industry that, on the whole, has already integrated the risks of climate change into the decision-making process. Insurance is game. The climate is changing, and they need to do what they can to reduce their cost burden. So using that as an example of an industry that is really good at making money, that cares about climate change and is doing something about it, that's a really positive place to start. I also know that FEMA is a pretty good hook for members who have interest in avoiding disasters and then also avoiding wasteful expenses after disasters. FEMA money has definitely been misappropriated after some major events. And I think, A, tying major events to climate change is a no-no, but B, reminding members that the power of FEMA is in rebuilding infrastructure in a more suitable way after a traumatic event. So climate adaptation comes into play, and that's obviously something that helps with risk reduction and ties back to the insurance industry and their concerns.
Grant can probably speak to this better than I can, but there are major investment banks and investors that account for climate change when they make investment decisions. Because it is a risk, and it's a risk they have to evaluate.